Hey guys, what's up? It's Finchinator here, and today we're doing an NU video. So as you guys may recall, the overused metagame recently had a tiering survey, so after I discussed it with my fellow councilmen in the never used tier, we decided that we're going to do the same. So much like an OU, I was the one that ran the survey, so I came up with these questions with the help of the fellow NU councilmen who are a great group of contributors and players of the NU metagame, and I put this out a couple days ago. It's now, you should be seeing this on Thursday, so you have the rest of Thursday and Friday to respond to this. So if you guys play the NU metagame or you guys are getting into the NU metagame, definitely check this out. I'll be sure to leave a link down below in the description. But here are my thoughts on all of these questions. And before I get into it anymore, I just want to apologize for one thing. When I recorded the Battle of the Week between Greninja Warrior and Davin, I actually had the game background music and my YouTube background music on at the same time. That was a complete oversight on my end. Only one of them was intentional, and unfortunately it compromised the quality of the video, so my sincerest apologies for that. And I also want to say that I'm going to be covering every single Battle of the Week starting next week, so I'm really excited about that. We're going to see a consistent stream of NU content on the channel, and this is going to kind of be the tip of the iceberg for that. I'm going to go over my survey responses and give my overall thoughts on the metagame. And we're going to start with actually a great question. How enjoyable do you find the current metagame? Well, of course my Smogon name is Finchinator, much like my YouTube name. But yeah, how enjoyable do I find the current metagame? I put it at an 8 out of 10. I'm going to be real with you guys. When Beware was in the metagame, I would have put it at a 4 or a 5. I think that Pokemon single-handedly dictated so much in team building, or it just derailed the battle. It was able to stomach a really ridiculous amount of physical attacks, even super effective ones from not even that high health, and it made it to the point where, with such a dominant offensive presence, having such a convenient defensive kind of presence as well, made it overbearing, made it so that you had to have a really restricted number of Pokemon in your team. Like, you almost had to run Cresselia to be safe against it, for example, and I didn't find that very good, especially considering that Cresselia was really good itself. And then we kind of went into a broken dynamic metagame where we then saw a lot of hyper offensive teams geared towards overwhelming Pokemon like Cresselia, and that made Beware even more broken, and then that made Cresselia even more polarizing, because then we saw things like Trick Room and Hail to counteract that, and we saw, Cresselia get into action in the hyper offense as well with like stored power sets, and it got out of hand really quickly. And then finally banning Beware, and to a much lesser extent Pangoro, which I actually voted do not ban on because I wasn't sold on, but neither here nor there. It's already gone, and I completely understand the decision. Now we're in a much healthier spot, and I don't think the metagame's perfect. There's still cheese. There's still matchup dynamics. I think a lot of the metagame right now is determined on how much mileage people get out of their Copperjaw. I still always butcher the pronunciation of that Pokemon, and also the Stealth Rocker versus Defog metagame, i.e., if you use a Stealth Rock Copper or a Bronzong against, let's say, a Talonflame, and you don't have Stone Edge or Toxic, or maybe you don't land them too successfully early on in the game, it's actually going to be really hard to make progress against some bulkier cores. But if you maybe run a Stealth Rocker that does well against them, then it kind of makes them a bit more of a liability if you don't, hard wall something else on the team. And all of a sudden, I feel like the kind of entry hazards metagame in NU, especially because there aren't a ton of heavy-duty boots users that are coming right now besides Stealth Rock with Pokemon, actually is like surprisingly more relevant than any other tier like RU, UU, or especially OU, where boots are all over the place. And I think that's actually kind of a cool part of strategy, though. It's something that you dictate with your own team construction, and you can find ways around. So, for example, teams that have Stealth Rock users that can't beat Talonflame, like Copperjaw without Stone Edge or Bronzong, especially if it likes Toxic, all of a sudden, are kind of forced to have other team members that can really abuse it coming in each time. And I think that actually leads to a more competitive and well-rounded metagame, which makes me segue into my next answer, how competitive and balanced the metagame is. And I put that as a 6 out of 10. Now, again, I feel like there are some matchup-y things like Hail, and I also feel like Mienshao forces your hand defensively a lot. You can't really beat it consistently with all-out offensive teams. You kind of have to run a couple stops to it. I've actually been liking a couple of poison types lately. Surprise ghost types like Savali Ghost can stop the Choice Scarf set pretty nicely. And then, things like Sylveon and Vileplume can work in a pinch. You got to be careful. Sylveon's got to be careful of Life Orb Poison Jab. And Vileplume is pretty safe, but it's susceptible to things like spikes and also the rare acrobatic set. I think the Vileplume actually kind of makes me feel the safest, but that's neither here nor there. Regardless, though, I definitely think it's a little matchup oriented, but I think that the pure Pokemon itself is pretty damn good. I think that I would have put it at a 2 or a 3, honestly, with Beware in the metagame. But now I'm putting it at a 6 or a 7. I give it a 6 now just because I think that we still have one Pokemon especially, that we're going to get to in a minute, that can be banned and make the metagame much better. But I could see it then being an 8 or a 9. And that's putting you in elite territory. So we're one step away from greatness, but we're still in a pretty good spot right now, in my honest opinion. Moving forward, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do I feel about Mienshao? And I just want to point out that according to the post, 1 is defined as you don't believe it's broken at all. 3 is defined as you think it's very good, but you're not sure if it's broken yet, meaning probably suspect worthy. And 5 is defined as you definitely think it's broken, you'd vote ban, and you probably would even be in favor of a quick ban. That's not the formal language behind it, but that's kind of what I, as a councilman, read it as, if you will. And that's how it's been applied in both OU and NU in prior context, OU in prior context and other tiers. This is actually the first NU survey, but we've also had surveys in Ubers, in UU, in RU, so I'm glad NU's kind of catching along, and I feel like PU and ZU might eventually as well. Is ZU a tier? I guess ZU is not really a formal tier, so they kind of have free reign to do whatever the hell they want, but PU actually is a formal tier. That's like a tier that's been in tournaments, and it's official in Smogon. I think that's really cool. They have a pretty good community themselves, but this is not a video where Finch raves about his enjoyment of the PU tier. But if you do want to see that video, let me know down below in the comments, because I'm always down to bring you all some lower tier action. But anyway, Mienshao's broken. I put it at a 5. The Life Orb set, as I said before, is really restrictive in my eyes. I find it to be very hard to keep in check. And in addition to that, I find that when you keep it in check, you can kind of abuse the situations if you're not getting hit by effect spore when Vileplume. So for example, everything but Vileplume really can only punish you with like Rocky Helmet, or with, potentially like Ruin Rigus negating Regenerator, which is like a gimmicky niche kind of thing. In that, Mienshao's Regenerator makes it kind of unpunishable. You can't keep it low because it's never really switching into attacks, and it's always paired with like Volt Switch or double switches and whatnot. And yeah, okay, it does take some outplaying to use. I can't understand that. So if anyone was not pro-banned on Mienshao, I feel the argument would be that it takes aggressive and proactive play to make work, and that's a form of outplaying. And if the better player is outplaying throughout the game, then they deserve to win regardless. So yeah, I do understand that. But the fact that Mienshao makes it so easy, you can do that all in one Pokemon. Mienshao can be your breaker. In a sense, it can be your revenge killer. It can be a long-term pivot despite being so fragile thanks to Regenerator. It can afford to run Life Orb, an item that's largely grown extinct in Pokemon outside of hyper-offensive settings because of Regenerator. Really, only Magikarp Pokemon and Pokemon that are sweepers on hyper-offensive teams that are only meant to come in once or twice every game can abuse Life Orb, but Mienshao can do it while being a pivot that comes in 5, 6, 7 times every game, despite being so fragile. And for Pokemon with such premium offensive stats, with high attack and high speed, that is such a rarity in the NU metagame. And then you look at the coverage. You have Close Combat, fairly reliable fighting type stab move that's quite strong. You don't miss like High Jump Kick. That's really amazing in my eyes. Knockoff, hit Ghost types, hit Psychic types. Poison Jab, hit Sylveon and other Fairy types as well. And finally, U-Turn, which is great for pivoting, also with Psychic types. And if you're facing, say, a Dark plus Ghost type core, for example, you don't want to potentially Close Combat into the Ghost type, but you don't want to U-turn into, you don't want to leave the Dark type to come in on staying on a knockoff. It's good for mid rounds like that. Obviously, that's like an overly general situation. I didn't articulate myself too well there, and I apologize for that. But the fact of the matter is that U-turn opened up the game, especially because while you're taking 10% for using it, you're gaining 33.3% for getting out with Regenerator, and you're setting up a teammate for success potentially. The main drawback is you basically can get effect spored by Vileplume, which is a pain, but it's not the highest percent chance. And if you're using Mienshao, yeah, you probably want to team build around Vileplume with your other 5 wisely, but that's very possible in the metagame. All in all, I think Mienshao is not quite as broken as Beware, but it's far more broken than Pangoro was. It's more broken than anything else in the tier currently, be it Cresselia, Salazzle, Tantrum, or Snow Warning. And moving forward, I definitely want to see it banned. Personally, looking forward, the ideal NU for me would be quick banning Mienshao, followed by a suspect test of Cresselia, and then potentially retesting Mienshao afterwards, just seeing if it maybe is adjusted into the metagame. Although without Cresselia, which is in a sense a soft check to it, I don't know how likely that would be, but also giving the power to the people to vote while also having the tier balanced for the start of Grand Slam next month is kind of my main goal as a councilman. So that's just my completely transparent answer to that question, because I know it's going to come up in the comments at some point. With that said, though, I wouldn't be concerned if it goes to suspect. I think that Mienshao would get banned pretty overwhelmingly in a suspect. I believe that we should suspect it if we don't quick ban it promptly, and I think that Mienshao is definitely the next Pokemon to go. Alright, I think I've said enough on the topic of Mienshao for the time being. We're already almost 10 minutes into the video, and we've only covered 1 Pokemon, so we have 3 more Pokemon and ability to cover, so we'll get to that then. spoke all my answers. So if you guys don't want to listen to me ramble on and on and on for ages about all the Pokemon in NU tier, then you've just seen all of them. So just go back 10 seconds as I catch my breath because I forgot my water. All right, anyway, so Cresselia, I actually have a bit of a controversial opinion on it. A lot of people are putting it at 4 or putting it at 5. Personally, I only put it at 3. In my opinion, Cresselia is a very good Pokemon. In fact, it's one of the top 3 to 5 Pokemon in the metagame, without a doubt, alongside Mienshao, alongside Vileplume. You could argue for Rotomo, you could argue for Sylveon. I'm absolutely forgetting something right now. Oh my goodness. Oh, Copper. Copper is the best Pokemon. Yeah, it's Copperjaw, Mienshao, then Cresselia, and Vileplume at top 4. And then you could argue for Rotomo, you could argue for Salazzle as number 5. Yeah, that's kind of how I don't know why I'm talking about this. This has nothing to do with the brokenness of Cresselia. Why am I going off on these tangents? All right, focus. Focus. Okay. So Cresselia, the thing about it is, not only is it like ridiculously bulky, but also it actually has like overwhelmingly good utility in this metagame right now. For a Pokemon with a fairly limited move pool and the mono psychic typing, which in a sense is kind of pedestrian in that it's weak to Ghost, it's weak to Bug, it's weak to Dark, common typings, and it's only really resistant of things like Fighting, which, yeah, okay, that's common, but it's oftentimes paired with Knockoff or U-Turn into this tier. It actually kind of isn't the best typing for a Pokemon like this. Like, if this was a Fairy type, like Sylveon, I guarantee you that Cresselia would already be banned and probably would be UU, for example. But that's not the world we live in, obviously. We are not playing a theoretical game of Pokemon. We're playing a realistic one. And as a mono psychic type, that's definitely not a favorable quality of Cresselia, but I don't feel like that's what holds it back. In fact, I don't think much holds it back beyond sheer passivity. And people have tried to take their stab at going against the grain and using more progress-oriented Cresselia sets, such as the Combine Booster Power set, specifically with like screen support on Hyper Offense, sometimes even with weakness policy, which I find to be absolutely crazy. That's neither here nor there, but just Combine sets, even without a whole ton of support, on balance in bulky offensive teams, can definitely hold its own. In fact, it's quite scary. Couple that with the fact that it has an absolutely overwhelming amount of defensive utility. I mean, you look at this thing's defensive stats, and nothing is able to tweak you out with neutral moves unless it's boosted, and then some, potentially even getting a crit on top of that. And you kind of get the crux of what Cresselia is. It's this big, fat, disgusting wall with win condition potential, utility potential, and an overwhelming defensive presence. And that alone, that summary of Cresselia, can be defined as broken. And I completely understand if your argument is that makes it broken. But I like to contextualize things. I really do. And I feel that in the context of the NU metagame, we actually do have some, albeit perhaps not enough, tools to break it. And that's kind of why I'm stuck at putting it at a 3 instead of at a 5, or if I feel there are absolutely enough, then at a 1. I'm in the middle here, where I'm pro-suspect, but not pro-quick ban. I'm committing to voting ban on a suspect. But in the tier, we have things like Copperjaw, which is able to beat Subcombined, and with Curse, which, in my opinion, running a second Stealth Rock user plus Curse 3 attacks Copperjaw is a really amazing strategy, and I do that a lot on my teams, and perhaps that's why I find it to be minimized. That's a really cool option. But okay, let's say you're not running that on every single team like everyone else. Sure, I also feel like things such as Decidueye and Escavalier and even Gallisopod are pretty solid Pokemon. I believe they're all either A or A- ranked, those 3 Pokemon. Even if you go down the tier, into the depths of viability, there are other offensive Pokemon that, yeah, maybe they aren't the most reliable defensively. Things like Galurk and even Drapion, that I feel are more fringe right now, but still see some usage. They can threaten it. Now, admittedly, if you look at the Drapion calcs, it's actually kind of depressing how little Knockoff does, but you can slap Swords Dance on it, or you could run a Taunt utility. So yeah, I get it. They're not the most common, but there are options there, and I feel like we need to explore them more. And that's why, in my opinion, if we're doing suspects and not a quick ban, I think we should absolutely suspect Mienshao first and Mienshao alone, because that also gives us a couple more weeks to put this puzzle, to piece this puzzle together, and see if there maybe are enough potential trends to muster up some more counterplay to Cresselia and keep it in check. Because in my opinion, it's not our job to ban as many things as possible that need to get banned as quickly as possible. Rather, it's our job to get it right and do our due diligence. And this maybe goes against the grain, but I don't think we need to rush it with Cresselia. I think Mienshao we need to rush it with because it's a Pokemon that we've already kind of seen that defensively there just aren't enough checks and counters to it. It goes without saying at this point, unfortunately. But when it comes to Cresselia, I feel like it's not really as much of an immediate threat both in the game and in the team builder, in that we can kind of explore what we have. And in the tier, again, with things like Escavalier, with things like Golurk, with Pokemon, even, I mean, if you go down the list, Silvally Ghost. Crap, I'm trying to think of that. What's its name? Ninjask. Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot Ninjask. And even other things, I mean, you can kind of beat it with some defensive options as well, depending on the set. Admittedly, Substitute can be a hard stop to them. But yeah, all in all, I feel as if Cresselia is not something that's going to, like, make games unplayable to the same extent Mienshao is. I definitely think it's suspect worthy. If we quick ban Mienshao, then I'm fine suspecting it promptly. But if we don't, I wouldn't be in favor of double suspect, and I would never be in favor of suspecting it before Mienshao. So that's kind of how I would contextualize it there. It's definitely priority number 2 for me. Now, I also gave Cresselia Salazzle a 3. And I was kind of between 2 and 3 on it, where I was kind of between 3 and 4 for Cresselia, as outlined before. And the thing about Salazzle is that it kind of can do a lot, despite only really having the ability to come in and do a little each time. I know that sounds like a weird thing that you'd read in a fortune cookie in your, like, hometown Chinese restaurant, and you'd be like, wow, that makes no sense. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the trash or the recycling bin. And that's all fine and well, but truth be told, it actually makes all the sense in the world. And I know you're like, what the hell is Finch saying right now? Making jokes about fortune cookies isn't that kind of bizarre. But think about it for a second. Like, let's say I'm facing a team with a Mantine or Cresselia with Psychic, and all of a sudden I get my Salazzle on turn 3, heavy duty boots negate stealth effect damage, yada yada yada. But I can't break through these Pokemon. At +2, I can't even break through them. If they're gonna do 1,000,000 to me, I'm gonna do 0 to them. But let's say I go for Toxic. And then, okay, they take Toxic. Maybe they stand for a turn or 2. They can recover, whatever. But then next time I come in, I can click Flamethrower or Sludge Bomb. And okay, they've taken a little damage. And they don't want to roost up every single time or Moonlight up every single time because of a couple reasons. 1, Cresselia's Moonlight PP is limited. 2, Mantine is also needed for things like Defog or like trying to get Scald Burns to make it so that every time it comes in, it isn't passive, just click and recover. But then, so let's say it took that damage. The third time your Salazzle comes in, it hasn't done much the first 2 times, but it's positioned itself to do a lot here. You all of a sudden can put it into a kill range, or Nasty Spot range in a kill range. Or maybe it's not the 3rd time, maybe it's the 4th or the 5th time, but with so much U-turn and so much Volt Switch and heavy duty boots, that becomes a possibility for Salazzle. Despite being admittedly a very fragile Pokemon, because of its speed and because of its sneakily good offensive presence, it can creep up on you and absolutely devour you in the late game. And it is challenging to revenge kill. Most teams have a Scarfer that can revenge kill it. You know, be it a Scarf Mienshao, which can revenge kill it from over half. Or be it a Scarf Rotomo, same thing, over half. Or, you know, be it something like a Scarf Flygon, which can devour it from full health. I mean, even some Pokemon can live a +2 hit that's not like Mantine or Cresselia. I mean, you see Gastrodon can tank it. Diancie can tank it. Flygon can tank it, although I've seen Dragon Pulse on Choice Specs, which can devour that. Guzzlord, you know, Vaporeon. I get it. There are checks to it. And honestly, I think that's why I put it at 2, because there is enough defensive counterplay to it. But I think when you couple the fact that my favorite set, that Nastod set I just alluded to, couple with the fact that there are cheesy sets like Choice Specs or Sub-Toxic, and has Encore, and so on and so forth. Now, you know, I feel like it actually has so much utility that it's always forcing progress. And maybe that's the symptom of a Pokemon that's very good. A Pokemon that should be A+ or even S rank. Maybe a controversial opinion, but I actually consider it potentially S. It's A+ right now, but maybe that's the symptom of something that's really, really good. But it definitely borders on being overbearing. It borders on me having to really look at Team Preview and saying, okay, what do I think the set can't be? And then trying to kind of play around it backwards like that. And that's very possible, especially for a player that is more experienced in the tier. And to that I say, a lot of people can play around it, minimize it, maybe even just trade with it at the end of the day. And that's all fine and well considering how fragile Salazzle is. I think that's a huge limiting factor for it. But I think it's enough to be a 2 or a 3. I think I'm actually going to revoke it to a 2. Just because I feel like the more I describe this, the more I say it out loud, I realize that, yeah, I'm kind of describing the symptoms of a Pokemon that's really good and maybe fringe suspect worthy, but not something I would outright go ban on right now. But if Cresselia were to be removed from the metagame, then I think I'd be at a point where I'd be a pro suspect. Not necessarily pro ban, but pro suspect. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think Salazzle is a sneaky, like, overwhelming presence right now. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Those are my thoughts rather on Salazzle. That's actually a Pokemon that I kind of stuck out of the survey. I mean, it did get discussed a ton beforehand. We mainly focused on the big 2 of Mienshao and Cresselia, but I hope that gives some clarity there. Okay. Next up, sorry, just checking the time, we have Tantrum. So Tantrum is really good with direct support. Yeah, it has coverage, close combat for steals like Pridgeot, Outrage, Head Smash, Dragon Dance, or whatever you want to run it in. It's just... I mean, I feel like in most games I'm getting 1 to 1.5 kills with Tantrum, and it's not sticking around forever. It's good in a couple roles. You can be a Venturer or a Sweeper or a Breaker, but it's nothing like overbearing. I just think it's the definition of a Pokemon that's really, really good, but not broken. And again, so I was kind of like Salazzle between 2 and 3. On this, I'm just between a 1 and a 2 because I feel like we already know what it could do. All of the Alligator and Shaggy counter are there. There's clearly enough revenge killers. There's enough offensive counterplay. And defensive counterplay is a little bit contingent on the set and the archetype you're using against it. But you can either suffocate it where it only comes in a couple times, or if you let it in enough, you can check it the first couple times it comes in. So it's kind of fine either way. So I don't think Tantrum is suspect worthy right now. I don't think it's ban worthy right now. But I understand why some people might complain about it. I actually think when Beware was in the tier, in a weird way, teams were more focused on checking it. And in a sense, we may have saw let's focus on Tantrum. It kind of slid under the radar, and then it was even better, especially on the Davin hyper offensive team and some other teams that we saw circulating the higher ladder. And that actually made it. That's actually why I was like initially like, wow, Tantrum's kind of a problem. But now I see a bit more of a reserved usage and more heightened preparation for it. Now there's more room in team building, and that's definitely an example of us prioritizing the right way, the NU community and the NU council, and that we banned the more oppressive Pokemon, Beware, and then all of a sudden that led to there being more openings to check other Pokemon that weren't necessarily our priorities, and now you see Tantrum settling down. So I might have put it as a 3, say 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, but now I'm putting it at a 2, maybe even a 1. We'll have to wait and see. And finally, there are Hail teams. Now, admittedly, I've yet to use a Hail team in this exact current metagame. I'll be the first to admit that, so I don't really have a ton to say here. But in facing it, I've only really felt troubled against it when using specific offensive builds that are ill-prepared for it. And I also view it as kind of an inherent risk, just like manual rain, like prior generations, for example, in that, yeah, there's going to be some good matchups, but there also going to be some really bad ones, and I don't necessarily view it as overly oppressive, overly problematic. Other people do, though, so I was like, okay, 2, I'll hear them out, but I'm not sold myself. So that's my brief, very brief, emphasis on brief, discussion on Snow Warning, Hail, and metagame. I don't really find it problematic. I don't, and I'm willing to hear people out. So yeah, that's all I got to say. Anything else I want to say? No, not really. I think the tier leaders, Lax and Roses, are doing a good job. I think my fellow councilmen are all super motivated and very helpful. I'm really happy to be working with all of them. So shout out to you all. And yeah, that's all I got to say. Yeah, I qualified via NU Snake Draft and the NU and the LTPL and the 2020 circuit. So yeah, not in the ladder though. I'm gonna go ahead and submit my answers once I end this video. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. I hope you guys enjoyed. I like getting you guys some NU videos, and this is more of an analytical videos plus some game narration. But don't worry, games are coming. Talk to you guys later. I hope you all have a great day. Okay, peace. Oh, like, comment, subscribe. Okay, bye.